Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where you live around the world. And I'm back with a further look and a bit of a thought about this new, possibly, the method of fixing my hub issues in the workshop. Now, I'm referring to the natural misalignment of the well, not misalignment, but it would be difficult to get alignment between the two tabs if they're not in a very accurate jig, which is why we like banging on about in SketchUp when we make our measurements or models, they need to be very accurate, because when we take it out into the workshop, the real world bites, and sometimes difference between drawing like this and in the workshop is different. So let's just hide that for clarity. What my thinking is, the batten can be recessed to accommodate the nuts, or the heads rather, of the bolts. So that's a possibility. So the use of the battens has another feature of tidying up the surface. I can get rid of that. It means also that if we've got a jig set up with the, let's say, the top tab with a predetermined bolt pattern, all of them can be drilled the same. But the lower tab, being a little bit more demanding, can be left undrilled. And then in the workshop, a block can be put in between the tabs, because they will be, in theory, pretty rigidly held in place. They'll move, but nonetheless fairly well held. We can drill through the already drilled tab through the timber, and then drill the hole in the bottom of the, or rather the bottom tab, in its correct position. The reason this is important that we get this right is because that one may not even be the same as its adjacent or its equivalent over this side, because of that layering, stacking feature of this approach. The all but tiny amount, 3mm difference, may be sufficient to misalign the two holes. I'm going to make a guess that may occur. Just that 3mm might be enough. So one jig has to allow for each jig needs to have the spacing correct, because let's just have a look, and it's generally going to be the same. 72mm spacing there, 72mm spacing there. One block for a jig can then be used to drill these pairs. It's a little bit of a guess, because in theory they should all be about, in the case 72, in this case, what is it, 72, so very close, isn't it? 1 mil. Would 1 mil difference matter? Probably not. The idea being that perhaps the bottom, it's going to be an interference fit, well, close, no, it's not an interference, but there will be a clearance fit up here that we want to make quite small, but because we're going through a thread, it might, by even using that same drill, be a slightly bigger tolerance, because the threads have been cut with the die when the threads were formed. You get what I mean? also having the combined upper and lower assembly means that we can't really recess our bolts into the timber in the manner that we would like in other photos that I showed in another video. Also, I'm noting I have got these maybe not 100% parallel. Or 90 degrees rather to this end here, because it doesn't look right, does it? The bottom. Anyway, you don't need to know that. But looking at it like this, you can actually see the elegance of the simplicity. Or the simplicity gives it some sort of elegance because it's straightforward, if that can be said to be. Yeah. I've got the feeling that this is taking a little bit of a, how would you call it? It's stepping ahead for it being used for my efforts. I can see me easier doing this once I've got the jigs made up for it than the steel hubs and all the other bits that need to go with it. While this may be a bit fiddly in some ways and a little bit lumpy compared to the other versions, I'm thinking that time spent on this will be well spent overall, rather than trying to over engineer the hubs. Still do like the strength of the threaded rod and pipe. I do like that. That to me is really, really strong. But the flip side is having the plates near the surface lends itself to maximum, or the leverage, you could say, is greater, or the ability to resist leverage is greater. Still like the threaded rod though, because you can imagine that if there's a threaded rod there bound at this point through the pipe, and you wind up the nut on the threaded rod, you are really pulling the hub and strut together, and that's very desirable. This relies on all those little tolerances, and once the load comes on, they will sort themselves out. But still looks nice though, enough for me to consider carrying on using it. So okay, that's it. A bit of a wandery old bleat there about where we're at. Had a look at this. I did make mention in the last video about, is there a hierarchy that is best to be considered, and I initially had these two struts as the number 1 and 2 positions, and they're the highest. Then it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Over here I've got a slightly different hierarchy, where these two struts are number 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6. 5 and 6 stay the same, but the reason for that is this gives you the shallowest of rebates, because rebates may be what I do for this instead of grooves. Grooves have their slurring my words, haven't even had a drink, but slots or grooves have their own issues. Wouldn't be an issue if I had a bandsaw, a good bandsaw. That would probably be ideal tool to create those grooves, but a rebate, much easier to do. So if we do that, rebate, and that is, with the battens over top, that means that the battens, however, would then have to span that extra distance, and that's what makes me a little bit reluctant to go that route at the moment. Packing is not really viable, don't think. I'm going to have to give it some thought. There may be a retro packing method that we can consider to get the battens as close together at the ends as possible, so that the cladding can be fixed to it more betterer. I love that word. Also, fixing of this, we would have to consider that we're drilling through 3mm steel, so yeah, I don't think that's too much of, it's not too onerous. Okay, that's it. Wandery old video, that one, but that's where we're at. And again, excuse me for having that whirring darn computer in the background noise, so apologise for that. Radio, see you in the next one. Bye now.